I have started a new channel called Lanila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. I swear on everything that breathes, I did not expect my death to begin with a honey badger chewing on my shoe while an alien audience cheered for my blood. Yeah, I know that sounds insane, but when the universe decides to ruin your day, it commits. My name is Jake Lawson, and 37 minutes ago, I was just a failing wildlife YouTuber wandering through the African savanna trying to record a dramatic documentary intro. Keyword, trying. Because as usual, things went wrong. See, I was filming what I thought would be my comeback video. The thumbnail idea was me kneeling next to a live, wild honey badger while looking intense and inspiring. The camera was mounted, the lighting was perfect, the title was brilliant. Man vs. Nature, heartfelt connection with the wild. But the honey badger had other plans, specifically violent ones. The morning sun burned the golden grass as I crouched toward the burrow entrance with slow, careful steps. I whispered into the camera that this creature was one of the fiercest animals on Earth despite its size. I was mid-sentence when the little tank of fury shot out of the burrow and latched onto my boot like an angry chainsaw. I screamed. Loudly. Not manly yelling. More like cartoon character dying in a trash compactor. I ran in circles like a malfunctioning chicken while the honey badger refused to let go. There was no majesty of nature. There was no emotional moment of connection. There was only pain, panic, and tragic comedy. I tried kicking. I tried pleading. I even tried reasoning with the beast. None of it worked. The creature clung on with the stubborn ruthlessness of a tax collector. The camera was still recording all of this disaster, which would have gone viral if anyone watched my videos anymore. But the last thing the camera captured was a blinding light from the sky and my scream as the earth disappeared under my feet. Abduction sounds glamorous in sci-fi movies. Tractor beams hum dramatically and spaceships glide majestically into view. Real alien abduction feels like being flushed up through a tornado of white fire and dropped into a cold metal coffin that smells like disinfectant and existential dread. I woke flat on my back in some kind of metal chamber. The honey badger was somehow still attached to my boot. Even interstellar kidnapping could not stop the unstoppable. I yanked my foot away and slammed my back into a glass wall. I realized I was trapped in some kind of tube chamber. Across rows of similar glass cells were strangely shaped figures. Reptilian limbs. Fur. Tentacles. Something gelatinous. Aliens. I was surrounded by aliens. The cold horror of that hit me deep. This was not Earth. This was not a prank. I had been taken. Overhead, a booming alien voice spoke in some guttural language that sounded like a blender full of rock. Then a translator system kicked in, and I heard an announcement in English. Welcome to the Galactic Coliseum presented by Zarlock Entertainment. Bringing conquest and carnage across the stars since Cycle 90897. Today we introduce new lower-tier species acquisitions for our opening trials. Place your bets. Losers will be processed. Bet. Trials. Processed. Those words scraped down my spine like knives. My glass cell lifted and moved along a track. I was being delivered somewhere whether I liked it or not. The honey badger, now free in the same pod as me, glared like it blamed me for everything. Honestly, I kind of blamed myself too. I should have listened to my mom and become an accountant. After a rattling elevator ride, the glass doors opened and bright lights cut across a massive arena. Thousands of alien spectators roared from tiered stands. A towering announcer drone hovered overhead. Jagged metal gates blocked our path until they slid open on a sandy battlefield. A 12-foot gladiator beast with tusks like swords stood in the center. The thing was built like a rhinoceros made of granite. When the announcer spoke again, the voice sounded like it was laughing. Next up as a warm-up round for our premium match. A combat trial between a battle boar of Karvok and this pathetic little fur rodent. The announcer paused as the spotlight found me. And its pet human. Laughter exploded through the stadium. Aliens slapped each other and spilled glowing drinks. Holographic projections showed betting odds. The Karvok beast had 99% chance to win. The little earth mammal and its human companion barely registered odds above zero. The crowd did not even consider us fighters. We were a joke. A warm-up act before real combat began. I could not breathe. I could not think. I looked at the honey badger sitting in the sand like it owned the place. Its claws dug in. Its thick fur bristled. It did not look scared. It looked insulted. The honey badger stared at the giant beast. The beast charged. The stadium shook from the impact when the Karvok hit the ground running. The honey badger did not move until the last possible second. Then something terrifying happened. The honey badger moved faster than any creature I had ever seen. It dodged under the beast and latched onto its leg. The crowd's laughter died in confused silence. The Karvok roared and stomped. The honey badger only bit harder. The creature dragged fur and claws across the sand like a ball of rage covered in knives. Blood sprayed. The beast stumbled. The honey badger did not stop. It climbed up the massive creature and went for the throat with feral calculation. The alien stadium watched in stunned disbelief as the tiny earth animal ripped the beast's jugular open. A river of black blood spilled across the arena floor. The monster toppled with a thunderous crash. The honey badger stood on its neck like a conquering warlord. There was no mercy, no hesitation, no fear. Silence hung over the arena for a long frozen moment. Then the stadium exploded in screams and chaos. Some stood in awe. Others shouted in fury. The betting circuits overloaded with angry gamblers. The announcer struggled to speak. That is not statistically possible. That creature is from classification level 2 primitive world Earth. This small striped mammal. The screen zoomed in on the honey badger. The crowd shouted one title in unison. The beast of Earth. I stood frozen. My heart hammered in my chest. For a moment I forgot my fear. I forgot everything except one simple realization. The galaxy had just witnessed something incredible. Something terrifying. The honey badger, the creature that once chased me for interrupting its brunch, had just defeated a galactic war beast. And every alien watching now understood one thing. Earth was not harmless. And nothing, absolutely nothing, messes with a honey badger. As the arena lights burned hotter and the crowd chanted, the honey badger looked at me. It stared with those small fearless eyes and growled like it already accepted me as part of its territory. In that insane moment I realized something even stranger. That little monster was my only hope of surviving this nightmare. And maybe, just maybe, if I could figure out how to work with it, we might stand a chance against whatever horrors this galaxy held. I swallowed hard and whispered to myself, "This is either the worst day of my life or the start of something wild." The honey badger cracked its claws against the sand. Whatever happens next, I was not alone anymore. I had a partner. A savage, unpredictable, unstoppable partner. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The roar of the alien crowd still rang in my ears long after the battle ended. Shock, panic, outrage, and violent excitement rippled through the arena like a wildfire that refused to die. The corpse of the colossal Karvok beast was dragged away by floating lift drones while the honey badger, covered in dark alien blood, casually licked its claws as if it had simply finished a light snack. I stood frozen beside it, processing the fact that I had somehow become sidekick to the galaxy's most terrifying murder ferret. The arena lights dimmed, and the announcer struggled to regain control over the broadcast while my heart tried to escape through my throat. The translator drones buzzed back on and declared that the crowd would now proceed to a commercial break as if nothing unusual had just happened, as if this was not the day alien history would record as the moment a honey badger broke the universe. Security drones swarmed us as the arena floor shifted under our feet. Metal panels slid apart and formed a platform that lowered us into a chamber beneath the stadium. Heavy containment doors sealed shut above us as we descended into dimly lit tunnels. Sparks crackled from exposed wires and pipes hissed with vapor. The honey badger strutted forward like it owned the place while I stumbled behind it, trying not to hyperventilate. A squad of towering insectoid guards wearing armored plating met us at the end of the tunnel. Their mandibles clicked in agitation as they studied us. The honey badger growled. The guards took a cautious step back. Even they respected the little beast. A massive gate opened ahead, and we were forced inside a holding area filled with cages of other captured beasts and gladiators from across the galaxy. Some looked like walking trees. Others had luminous eyes and metallic skin. A few were massive enough to crush a battle tank, but not a single one dared make a move when the honey badger walked past. Fear spread like a scent. I saw screens attached to the walls broadcasting replays of the arena fight. The honey badger tearing into the beast. The crowd screaming. Me screaming. Even replayed in slow motion, it did not feel real. A robotic voice echoed overhead announcing that the betting odds for future matches had been recalculated. The honey badger now sat at the top of the galactic rankings for ferocity. That fact would have been hilarious if my situation was not so horrifying. A gate slid open on the side of the chamber. A tall alien with sleek silver skin and dark spiraling horns entered, followed by a hovering assistant drone. He wore a long robe decorated with military crests and medals. His eyes burned with arrogance. He smiled with razor teeth. I recognized him instantly. Zarlok, Supreme Warlord of the Galactic Conquest Arena. His face was plastered across the arena walls during announcements, commercials, and advertisements for something called plasma nachos. He was a celebrity tyrant. He studied the honey badger like it was made of gold. Remarkable, he said, his voice smooth and chilling. A warrior of unmatched savagery hidden on a primitive world. I must congratulate your creator. He looked down at me. I shook my head quickly. Creator, no, I said. Just a wildlife vlogger. Wrong place, wrong time. Also, I am pretty sure this thing hates me. Zarlok ignored me. He leaned closer to the honey badger. You will be my greatest champion. The galaxy will kneel before you. Your victories will earn me a fortune. Your legend will echo through the stars. The honey badger growled and snapped its jaws at his hand. Zarlok did not flinch. He simply smiled wider. Yes, you will do perfectly. He gave an order in his alien tongue, and 2 guards dragged me aside. I fought against them, but they held me easily. The honey badger roared and lunged toward me. An energy barrier rose around us, sparking violently. The honey badger slammed against it, furious. Zarlok tilted his head as if amused. The beast is loyal to you. That is unexpected. Interesting. Then his eyes narrowed. Perhaps you are useful after all, human. You will serve as its handler. Handler was a generous word. I was now a glorified chew toy with a pulse. The guards shoved me down a corridor and into a training bay lined with steel platforms and energy shield. This place reeked of sweat, blood, and hopelessness. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted. I had no plan, no allies, no clue how to stay alive long enough to escape. The honey badger was released into the bay behind me. It walked over and sniffed me. Maybe it was checking to see if I had turned into food. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the last piece of beef jerky I had from Earth. A miracle that it survived the abduction. I held it out. The honey badger sniffed it. Then it gently took the jerky from my hand and began chewing. For a moment it looked almost peaceful, like a violent little bulldozer with fur. A small swarm of floating drones buzzed toward us. Each projected holographic training schedules and combat strategies written in alien script. A nervous-looking alien engineer shuffled behind them. He was thin and pink-skinned with huge yellow eyes and trembling hands. "Do not panic," he said in a squeaky voice. "I am here to help you survive. Maybe. Possibly. If statistically possible." "Who are you?" I asked. He flinched like I had thrown a rock at him. "Tinkrick. Xenobiology Research Division. Forced labor contractor. Please do not let the beast eat me." The honey badger hissed at him and he jumped back. He pointed shakily at the drones. You and the creature begin arena training tomorrow. If you fail, you will be processed. What does process mean? I asked. He blanched. You do not want to know. For the next several hours we were forced to endure brutal training simulations. Holographic enemies attacked from every direction. The honey badger demolished them with terrifying efficiency. I contributed by screaming and hiding behind crates. Tinkrix watched nervously and took note. You must learn to coordinate with the creature, he said. The audience loves a team dynamic. Team dynamic, I said. It does not even listen to me. Tinkrix tossed me a shock collar device. Then make it listen. I stared at the collar, revolted. I looked at the honey badger. It stared right back with eyes that clearly said, go ahead, try it, and I will end you in your sleep. I tossed the collar aside. No chance. Tinkrix stared at me with awe. He whispered, I cannot believe a human just refused a direct order. You may be insane. Or heroic. Or both. Probably insane, I said. After training, we were thrown into a cramped holding cell. Cold, metal walls. Flickering lights. The honey badger curled up beside me like a guard dog. I leaned against the wall and tried to think. Somewhere, far away, Earth had seen the broadcast. They knew I was alive. They saw the honey badger fight. Maybe they would try to find me. Or maybe they were already making memes about it. Knowing Earth, both were equally possible. I looked at the honey badger. It stared back as if it was thinking too. I do not know if you understand me, I said, but if we are going to get out of here, we need to survive long enough to find a way. The next morning did not begin with sunlight or birds or any peaceful sign of life. It began with alarms, shouting, and the sound of metal doors crashing open. A squad of armored arena handlers dragged me and the honey badger out of our cramped cell before I was even fully awake. The honey badger snarled and twisted, refusing to be handled. They shocked it with an electric prod. The result was 3 unconscious guards and several others running for their lives. The honey badger hated being touched, and I was starting to relate to that feeling. We were forced through a series of tunnels into a massive chamber packed with other gladiators. It was the combat prep hall, a staging ground before arena events. Beasts and warriors of every shape and size snarled, roared, flexed, or sharpened weapons. Every set of eyes turned toward us as we entered. I had never been the center of attention in a room full of homicidal aliens before, and I never wanted to be again. Yet there I stood, a human wearing a half-burned jacket and mismatched shoes, next to a honey badger grooming itself like this was a spa day. Whispers and murmurs spread through the crowd. The human's pet, the earth beast, the little death animal, or my personal favorite, the eater of armies. Rumors traveled fast out here. A few gladiators glared at us with jealousy or anger. Others looked afraid. One giant red brute stared down at me as he sharpened a serrated blade across a stone. Small, weak, squishy. Not worth eating, he grunted. He will not survive another match. The honey badger launched itself at his face. 3 seconds later he was on the ground screaming as he tried to pry it off. The crowd erupted in gasps. The lesson was clear. The honey badger feared nothing. Arena officials arrived to separate them before someone lost a face. As the chaos settled, a new warrior stepped forward. She moved with quiet confidence through the crowd, and whispers followed her like shadows. She had deep violet skin and silver hair braided tight behind her shoulders. Scars marked her arms like violent constellations of her past. Her eyes were ice-cold and unbreakable. This was Mira, a gladiator so feared that the arena announcers often used her name as a threat to rookies. She looked at the honey badger with curiosity, then at me as though I were a puzzle that did not fit together. "So you are the handler of the earth beast," she said. I did not recognize it as a question, more a judgment. "I do not handle anything," I said. "I just try not to die." She nodded once. "Survival is a talent." Before I could reply, Zarlok himself appeared on a platform above us with a view over the hall like a king watching his subjects. "Today," he said, "your pathetic lives serve my entertainment. Your purpose is simple. Fight. Kill. Earn glory or die screaming. The crowd roared. Mira looked away. The honey badger yawned. I wondered if being terrified every hour of every day would eventually just become normal. I kind of hoped so because I did not see things getting easier. A handler drone floated down to us and announced that match schedules had changed due to audience demand. The honey badger and I were no longer in warm-up matches. We were now main attractions. The galaxy demanded more of the Earth beast. Apparently, viewers had flooded the arena networks with bets and theories. Some wanted us dead. Others believed the honey badger was some kind of mythical destroyer reincarnated in mammal form. A few fanboys even formed a cult around it called the Church of Eternal Badger. The comments alone were insane. I wondered how long before Earth joined in the chaos. The next fight was not a simple beast versus beast match. This was a team combat trial. 5 fighters enter, 1 team leaves. Losing team gets eliminated permanently. Our assigned teammates were an angry lizard man named Gresh, a 3-eyed assassin who spoke only in whistles, and a small furry alien who fainted when he saw blood. The fainting guy fainted 8 times before the match even started. Not a strong group. Mira was placed on the opposing team. My stomach dropped. This was bad. Inside the arena, the roar of the audience layered with futuristic metal music that sounded like a war march. Lasers slashed through the air as flashing lights pulsed to match the beat. It was designed to overwhelm the senses and hook the crowd into bloodlust. I held my ground behind a shattered pillar while our team spread out. Gresh charged into battle swinging his plasma spear. The assassin leaped onto the walls like a spider, vanishing into the shadows to hunt from above. The fainting guy fainted. Then Mira stepped into the arena. The crowd fell silent as if acknowledging a storm. She wielded a massive war hammer on her back and a bladed gauntlet. Her gaze locked onto us. She moved like a predator. Deliberate, cold, measured. The kind that never second-guesses a kill. I looked at the honey badger and pointed at an approaching enemy. That one first. It ignored me. It locked onto Mira instead. The badger had chosen its challenge. The most dangerous opponent on the field. Mira sprinted. The honey badger met her in a blur of savage momentum. Her hammer swung with brute force, and the badger slipped under it with impossible timing. She attacked with speed that split air. It countered with fury that shredded worlds. Their clash was not a fight. It was an argument between unstoppable forces. She grabbed it mid-leap and hurled it across the arena. It crashed through a stone barricade but charged back without hesitation. Nothing slowed it. While they battled, I ducked, dodged, and mostly stayed alive through dumb luck and screaming. One enemy came at me with a blade. I panicked and threw sand in his eyes. He slipped on the fainted alien and hit his head on a rock. Knocked out cold. I yelled victory out of fear more than triumph. Mira finally disarmed the honey badger with a brutal strike that sent it skidding through dust. She knelt in front of it, hammer poised over its skull. The audience held its breath. The honey badger bared its teeth, refusing to yield. She spoke softly. "You are wasted here. You do not belong to this arena. Something darker hides behind your eyes. You are more than a beast." The honey badger growled as if insulted. Mira struck the ground next to it and stood. She offered her hand to me. "Join me," she said. "I can help you escape this place." I froze. Escape. The word hit my spine like lightning. I wanted it. More than anything. Before I could speak, a deafening alarm cut through the arena. Zarlok appeared on all screens watching us. "Betrayal," he roared. "Unauthorized conversations detected. The match ends now." Security mechs dropped into the arena. Massive machines armed with cannons and energy nets stomped toward us. Mira cursed under her breath. The honey badger leaped between us and them, ready to fight an army alone. But everyone saw it. The truth. Mira was not fighting for Zarlok. She was planning something. A rebellion. A chance at freedom. And we had just stepped into the storm with her. I did not know if we were allies or doomed enemies. But one thing was certain. This was no longer just about survival. It was about revenge. And the galaxy was about to learn why you never underestimate something that refuses to die. Chaos exploded in the arena the moment the alarm sirens shrieked across the metal sky. Red emergency lights pulsed like a heartbeat of war as mechanical security walkers dropped down from hidden ports along the colossal dome. The crowd screamed with excitement, not fear. For them, this was entertainment. For us, this was a death sentence. The metal giants resembled nightmares forged in a factory of brutality, each one with laser cannons mounted on their shoulders and steel limbs strong enough to crush bone like chalk. Mira grabbed my arm with brutal urgency and dragged me away from the center of the arena. Move, she shouted. The honey badger had no interest in retreat. It hurled itself straight at the nearest mech, leaving bloody claw trails as it tore through a leg joint and snarled with fury. The crowd went wild. The mech fell sideways, sparks flying, and crashed into the sand with a thunderous clang. Gresh the reptilian gladiator roared and joined the fight, charging another mech. He drove a plasma spear into a vulnerable seam, melting armor. A blinding explosion tore through the air. The assassin vanished into shadow and started landing precise strikes against machine control cores. Even fainting guy woke up, screamed in terror, and surprisingly threw sand perfectly into a mech's sensor ports before fainting again. Everyone was suddenly fighting for survival. I could barely breathe as I ducked under a flying piece of shrapnel. Zarlok's enraged voice boomed from every speaker. Security breach. Unauthorized alliance. Kill them all. Mira threw a long serrated blade into my hand. You want to live, then fight. I looked down at the weapon like it was a live snake. I do not know how to use this. She punched a mech drone out of the air with her metal gauntlet before answering. Then learn fast. Mira fought like a living storm. Every movement was instinctive and violent. She grabbed a disabled mech, flipped over it, then kicked a soldier into the dirt so hard he bounced. I realized something as I watched her. Watching her fight felt like watching someone who was not fighting for survival. She was fighting for vengeance. The honey badger continued ripping apart machines like a chainsaw made of rage. No matter how many lasers fired at it, nothing slowed it down. It was bleeding, but even its blood seemed angry. My heart pounded as I stayed low, running between debris and trying not to die. I sliced a metal cable by accident trying to steady myself, and an entire suspended cannon platform came crashing down onto 3 enemy soldiers. I blinked, stunned. Well, that worked. Maybe dumb luck was a valid combat strategy after all. We fought our way into one of the arena tunnels that led backstage, dodging stun blasts and missiles. The walls trembled from mechanical stomps behind us. Mira grabbed a fallen soldier's wrist panel and hacked into it with quick, brutal precision. She slammed a code into the control screen. Maintenance access, she said. Come on. The honey badger growled behind us and kept enemies back with a murderous stare no mech dared challenge up close. The maintenance door opened, and we stumbled into a dim industrial tunnel where roaring machines fed power to the arena. Steam hissed from the pipes. Harsh artificial wind carried the scent of coolant and hot metal. We ran deeper until lasers no longer followed us. We stopped only when Mira decided it was safe enough to breathe again. I slid to the ground, chest heaving. My muscles felt like melted rubber. My thoughts felt numb. But worse than fear or exhaustion was suspicion. I looked at Mira. Who are you really? She shook her head. We do not have time for this foolishness. The arena will deploy hunter teams. We must keep moving before they track us. No. I stood and pointed at her. You just risked everything to help me and the badger. Why, you could have killed us. You could have won that fight. But you did not. So tell me why. Her jaw tightened. The flicker of rage behind her eyes changed, less violent, more painful. At last she spoke. I was not born a gladiator. No one is. I used to be part of a free colony on the world of Helios 9. Zarlok attacked it. He took people. My family. He took my little sister. Her voice did not crack. That somehow made it worse. He forced us to fight for his empire. We were his trophies, his slaves. I swore I would find a way to kill him. I will tear down this arena and everything he built. But I cannot do that alone. The honey badger walked close and sniffed her hand, perhaps detecting the sincerity in her rage. I believed her. I hated that I believed her, because trusting anyone here was a risk that could get me killed. But I also knew she was my only hope. I nodded slowly. So what is the plan? Before she could answer, a heavy gate at the far end blasted open. Soldiers stormed in with crackling shock rifles. Mira grabbed her hammer, I grabbed the honey badger, and we ran again. The pursuit intensified until sheer exhaustion slowed us. We ducked behind a thick generator column while red battery lights flickered overhead. Mira cursed. Reinforcements are closing all exit. They know we are here. So we find another way, I said. No, she said. We hold them off here. Someone has to survive this. Someone has to warn the others. Others, I said. What others? The rebellion, she replied. There are fighters trapped across a dozen arenas. Not everyone is broken. Not everyone obeys. We want freedom, but we need a spark. A sign. Something to show us it is possible. She looked at the honey badger. And when that beast from Earth defied the impossible, I knew I had found that sign. Suddenly weapons fire erupted just feet from us. The enemy was closing fast. Mira slammed a metal panel and exposed a service shaft. She shoved me toward it. You go. Take the beast. Tinkrix will find you. Who Tinkrix, the cowardly engineer? I asked. She nodded. He is more of an ally than he seems. Find him. He knows how to disable the arena shields. Go now. What about you? I asked. She readied her hammer. I buy time. I shook my head. You cannot hold them alone. She smiled a hard, broken smile. I have been alone a long time. Then she shoved me into the shaft and slammed it shut. Through the narrow grate I watched her charge toward incoming soldiers, roaring with fury. She fought like a legend. One against dozens. A single storm against an empire. Then smoke filled the hall and everything vanished. I crawled through the shaft with the honey badger close behind. My hands shook, my breath came heavy, and dread weighed on my chest. I had wanted answers. I got them. And now I had something worse. A mission. A war I never asked for. A responsibility I did not want. Mira had risked everything to send us forward. I had no idea if she survived. But I would not let her sacrifice mean nothing. There was only one path now. Find Tinkrix. Destroy Zarlok's control over the arenas. And tear down this empire piece by piece. I reached the end of the shaft, kicked open the panel, and dropped into darkness. The honey badger landed in front of me and stared forward with determined ferocity, as if it knew the war had begun. I looked down at my blood-stained hands and whispered to myself, then so be it, because now I was not just fighting to survive. I was fighting to bring everything crashing down. We crawled through maintenance tunnels that smelled like hot metal and old oil, the honey badger padding silently behind me like a small, furious shadow. My legs felt like jelly from the shaft crawl, and every nerve in my body sang with the awareness that the arena's security grid could sweep us at any moment. The shaft spat us into a cluttered service bay where broken drones were stacked like dead birds and spare mech limbs hung from hooks. I squinted into the dim light and saw a hunched figure bent over a workbench, muttering to himself as he soldered a glowing circuit. He looked up when the honey badger sneezed in my face. Tinkrix, the pink-eyed engineer from training, jerked back as if someone had thrown a live grenade at him, and then did what cowardly engineers do best. He glanced at the exit and tried to run. I grabbed his sleeve. Not very heroic, but effective. He stopped, small and trembling, and then realized he could not abandon us. He snapped his fingers and produced a crude-looking datapad from a pocket. You should not be here, he whispered in a voice like marbles in a tin. The arena will glass you from orbit if they find you. I told Mira to run. She did not. She stayed. I told him Mira is probably dead. He made a face like someone who had been dragged into plumbing. "She is alive," he said. I hacked into one of the maintenance cams. "She is holding. But not for long. We need to move quickly." Tinkrix led us through a maze of service corridors toward a restricted lab area that smelled of chemicals and electricity. He explained in staccato bursts that the lab was where Warlords xenobiologists ran their upgrade protocols on captured creatures. They injected DNA snippets, cyberplates, and behavior modifiers that turned beasts into weapons. Rumble the honey badger had something the scientists called an adaptive genome. Whatever the alien surgeons tried, that little mammal either shrugged it off or turned it into a better version of itself. Tinkrix's eyes gleamed in a way that was half fear and half fascination. "If we could get Rumble back before they finished whatever upgrades Zarlok planned," he said, "there might be a chance to flip the system. If not, the badger would become a weapon for the Empire." We crept along catwalks until the lab came into view, a cathedral of glass and steel at the center of a compound. Inside, rows of holding vats pulsed with bioluminescent fluid and cages held creatures with bulging eyes and mechanical limbs. A central chamber glowed brighter than a star, and in the middle of that chamber, in a glass pod that looked like a coffin, something small scratched at the inside. I could barely breathe as I realized the pod contained Rumble. The honey badger turned its head as if it recognized its reflection, and then it barked a small, furious bark. My chest tightened. Tinkrix slid a keycard from his sleeve and handed it to me. "This will open the inner lock," he said. "It will also set off the alarm if you touch the wrong terminal. So try not to be dramatic." I moved like a man full of bad decisions and courage. The card clicked into the reader and the inner doors hummed open. For a terrifying second, every light in the lab dimmed like a collective gasp, and then security drones pivoted, targeting a motion sensor I had not even seen. Tinkrix swore in a language I did not know and threw a handful of soldering beads into the drone's optic. Sparks burst and the drones dipped in a shower of smoke. The alarm started howling, but the inner chamber was suddenly a chaos ballet, and we rushed forward. I grabbed the pod and it slid open with a hiss. Rumble shot out like a cannonball of fur and nails and pure temper. It looked different. The badger's fur was thicker, braided with faint, metallic filaments that glinted like starlight. Its claws had tiny serrations that caught the light. Its eyes, once small and animal-bright, now had a strange depth, like they reflected not only the present but the memory of a dozen past skirmishes. It shook its head, spraying a fine mist, and then it fixed me with a look that made my soul press against my ribs. I offered the last of the beef jerky, and it took it, but then it turned and began tearing through the containment field like it was pulling paper away from a tomb. We fought our way out of the lab as if we were actors in some explosive commercial. Myra's face flickered across a maintenance screen for a breath, slamming a pile of sentries back just as we passed. Tinkrix hacked doors and hacked him again, voice shaking as he bragged and apologized at the same time. We barreled into the staging hall where gladiators still spilled from last skirmishes, injured and furious and suddenly more united than divided. When Rumble stood on a fallen mech and roared, the hall tilted in a new direction of possibility. Fighters who had once bared teeth at us now bared their teeth at the tyranny above them. Word travels fast in a place built on screams. Someone yelled freedom and the simplest, most dangerous idea in the arena universe took root. Panels were kicked down. Chains were snapped. The fainting alien woke up, tripped over a discarded limb, and screamed like a banshee which somehow pumped more blood into the frenzy. The rebellion was messy and beautiful and terrifying. I barely kept pace, stealing a plasma wrench and using it to cut nets and blast lock. Tinkrix ran alongside, darting into consoles and opening gates with trembling fingers. He looked at Rumble like a scientist who had accidentally created a god, equal parts proud and deeply afraid. Zarlok's roar then cut through the jubilation, a sound that made the floor tremble. His fleet was not yet prepared to invade every corner of the compound, but his forces were enough to respond. The first response came not from the arena's legions but from a channel Tinkrix had left open to every broadcast feed. Hacked feeds flared to life with images from Earth. Small fighter drones and a handful of battered human ships that had followed the signal, cloaked and desperate. The Earth Council had not forgotten us. They had sent a strike team not because they loved us but because letting an empire enslave Earth's creatures and broadcast the humiliation would make everyone on Earth a laughingstock. The sight of human pilots on the screens was a ridiculous, enormous relief. The compound became a battlefield with allegiances in motion. Gladiators fought with a fury that smelled like justice. The honey badger tore through reinforced doors with newfound might, and each time it sank its teeth into an armor joint the crowd's old laughter cracked into something like hope. Mira, when she rejoined us, was not unscathed, but she was a living storm and a leader with all the scars earned for it. Together we pushed toward the Central Command, not because victory was certain, but because the moment had arrived when the price of staying passive was worse than the price of fighting. We reached a central atrium where Tsar Lok stood on a dais like an emperor in a bad dream, and his soldiers formed a ring around him. War erupted in a single breath, a moment that tore open the world and flooded it with fire. No horn sounded, no leader called for the charge. It simply began with the unstoppable forward motion of will. Mira raised her hammer. The gladiators roared behind her. Rumble bared its serrated claws and launched forward like a fist thrown by the universe itself. And I ran with them, because there was no room left for fear. There was only forward. Tsar Lok stood upon the central command platform above the arena pit, draped in armor that gleamed like obsidian and conquest. Troops swarmed his elevated throne as defense towers unfolded around him with mechanical precision. Energy beams screamed across the atrium and explosions shook the walls as the arena transformed into a war zone. But the rebellion did not falter. Gladiators who had once been forced to tear each other apart now fought side by side, united by something stronger than fear, rage and a hunger for freedom. The honey badger rammed through armored guards and ripped open a corridor for us with brute force, shrugging off blaster fire as if pain were beneath its notice. I ducked behind fallen mech plating and swings of plasma fire, blasting anything that got too close with a weapon I could barely control. Mira fought ahead of me like a living tempest, turning enemies into broken metal and regret. Tinkrix provided cover through hacked defenses, locking doors behind us and overriding turret commands so that the machines now targeted Tsar Lok's soldiers instead. We surged up the spiral walkway toward the dais, step by brutal step, as though climbing a mountain carved out of violence. Tsar Lok watched us approach, neither surprised nor worried. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a dark calm. "This is the nature of beings. You believe you fight for freedom. But I know truth. All creatures crave domination. You will replace me and become me. Every tyrant begins as a rebel." Maybe he thought his empty logic would break us. Maybe he thought destiny obeyed speeches. Before Mira could answer, Rumble let out a growl that shook the rail. It conveyed everything needed, defiance with fangs. Tsar Lok descended the last steps of his throne and removed his cape. His armor unfolded, plates shifting to form heavy gauntlets and bladed pauldrons. A warlord who conquers worlds does not hide behind armies. He earns the fear he commands. His soldiers pulled back to form a ring around the platform. The command center behind him sealed, backup shields rising. This was going to be settled by force. He pointed at Rumble. "Beast of Earth. You are strong. Unbreakable. A symbol. And a symbol must be destroyed." He triggered something on his gauntlet and the floor panels trembled. A monstrous gladiator machine rose from beneath the platform, 20 feet tall, armed with rotating plasma cannons and a spine lined with blades. Its chest housed a prison-like capsule where something faintly alive pulsed within. The mech roared to life, fueled by synthetic rage and some unholy fusion engine. Its target was Rumble. Tsar Lok smiled. "Kill it." Rumble leapt at the mech, claws flashing. The machine met the charge and swiped, throwing Rumble across the platform like a rag doll. It crashed against a pillar but recovered instantly. Now it was personal. The mech struck with relentless force, sending shockwaves through the metal floor, but Rumble was faster, slashing through hydraulic lines and armor seams and making the giant bleed sparks. Every time the mech knocked Rumble down, it rose angrier. Every time it was blasted with plasma, it came back meaner. I wanted to help, but I was holding back a squad of elite guards with a weapon that hummed too hot in my hand. Mira met Zarlok himself at the center of the platform. Their clash shattered metal tiles with every blow. Her hammer rang against his armored gauntlets, each swing fueled by years of fury. Zarlok moved with devastating precision, a brutal tactician. He struck with no wasted energy and fought without hesitation. He was everything a conqueror should be, and Mira was everything made in defiance of one. I was driven backward by incoming fire until my back hit the mech's wreckage. Tinkrix slid into cover beside me, clutching a stolen control tablet. "I have an idea," he said. "It is terrible. I hate it. But it might work." He pointed at the mech Rumble was fighting. "That thing is not just a machine. It is wired into Zarlok's throne system. If we hijack its command core, we could overload the arena shields." "You mean blow them up and hope we do not vaporize everyone?" I said. "That is the terrible part," he replied. "But it will break their command. And maybe then we can win." We sprinted toward the mech, dodging heat blasts. I jumped onto its lower frame while Tinkrix climbed the back and reached into the exposed circuitry. Sparks scorched his hands as he worked. "Hurry," he shouted as Rumble slammed into the mech, shaking it violently. "I am trying," I yelled back. "I am not a mech surgeon." The machine roared and flailed as Rumble tore off one of its cannon arms. Tinkrix jammed his wrist tool into a port. Almost there. Zarlok saw what we were doing. He abandoned his duel with Mira and sprinted toward us. Mira tackled him mid-charge, locking his arm to stall him, but he overpowered her with savage strength. He slammed her into a wall and charged again. If he reached us, everything was over. So I made a decision without thinking. I ran toward him with nothing but a broken pipe and a scream that would embarrass me for life. He swatted me aside with a backhand that cracked ribs and sent me flying. Pain exploded behind my eyes. Everything blurred. I stood anyway. He grabbed me by the throat. "You are weak," he said. "A parasite clinging to the strength of others. And everything ends with you broken." My hand slipped into my jacket pocket and closed around something soft. I pulled it out. The honey badger's last piece of jerky. Its scent was familiar. Earth. Home. I shoved it into Zarlok's face. He recoiled in confusion. And then Rumble hit him with the force of a meteor. The honey badger slammed him to the ground, tearing his armor open and ripping into him with everything it had. Zarlok roared in disbelief. The machine behind me screamed as Tinkrix finished his hack. "Do it," I shouted. Tinkrix slammed his hand on the trigger. The mech detonated in a blinding shockwave that shattered the arena shields. Every broadcast system fried. Every slave collar unlocked. Every arena gate blew open. On dozens of planets at once, the captives of Zarlok rose. It was not just a battle now. It was an uprising. Zarlok tried to rise, but Mira struck him from behind, driving his own blade through his armor. He staggered, stunned. Rumble ended it. The honey badger launched itself at his throat and tore it out. The arena fell silent. Then it erupted. The rebellion had a victory. Not a clean one. Not a gentle one. But one that would echo. Mira stood over the fallen warlord. "Freedom," she said softly. It was not a declaration. It was a promise. Rumble walked up beside me, covered in dust and blood, breathing hard. It nudged my leg once and sat down. I looked at the galaxy's smallest and fiercest war hero and laughed weakly. "We are going home. Somehow."